From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, what's up? Dr. Jason here, Dental Lighthouse Podcast, and I'm going to apologize for the audio. Actually, I probably should apologize to my editor, Steve, who handles all of the audio, because I'm constantly getting yelled at about recording podcasts in the truck, and here I am recording a podcast in the truck. But like you've heard me say many times before, for example, with one-on-ones, stop waiting for the moment to be perfect. Stop waiting to have the perfect setup, to have a one-on-one, have the mood lighting be correct, to have the music be perfect, to have the right snacks and food on the table. Just have the one-on-one. If you can't do it in person, have it via Zoom. If you can't do it via Zoom, have it via phone. And that's kind of where I'm at now with this podcast recording. I have something I need to deal with in one of our offices. One of our associates communicated that they're not feeling supported, and I want to rectify that, right? And the reality is she's probably right. We had some miscommunication, and I need to ultimately own the fact that I need to be better at supporting this particular associate on a regular basis for the next season. And what does that mean? That means that I'm going to have to make do with doing some podcasts in the car or in the truck. So it is what it is. But that's not the reason that I wanted to share some stuff with you. I wanted to share some examples of some conversations that we've had in the group mastermind, our Friday call with a bunch of coaching clients. Super cool group, about 20 dentists in there, their office managers and operations people. And we just talk about real stuff. And we use the collective wisdom of the group to solve real problems. So last week, a great doc on the East Coast who actually just finished an expansion, went from, I think, 4 ops to 8 ops, hired an associate about 6 months ago. Team loves her. He had shared, he got real vulnerable, and I'm not going to mention his name because he got real vulnerable in the group, but got real vulnerable in the group that he was feeling a sense of resentment towards his associate of 6 months, and trying to identify why he feels that level of resentment and what he can do about it. So, like everything, we need to kind of peel back the onion and figure out why. Why are you feeling this way? Well, without getting into, all the nitty-gritty, this doc was managing a very busy practice. It was just him, 3 hygienists. They were doing about $200,000 a month. And he was working 4 days a week clinically, sometimes 4.5. And he was getting burnt out. And he was ending up exhausted when he went home, and he couldn't be there for his spouse and his family like he wanted to show up for them because of the exhaustion of just crazy clinical days. So he did what he thought was the right thing. He hired an associate, and that's a common strategy, common recommendation. If you're overwhelmed, there's a few things that you can do. If your vision is to continue to grow, and obviously his was, because he was expanding to 8 operatories. So in line with his strategy, with his vision, he brought on another provider. And was that the right solution? Yes, it was the right solution, because he could always go back to his vision, right? So whenever we talk about onboarding new clients and stuff, we constantly start with vision. If his vision was a lifestyle practice where he would eventually not have to run a business, but basically just give himself a really good job, then we wouldn't have brought on an associate, right? But his vision was to grow. Anyways, they were doing about $200,000 before they hired this associate. And here we are 6 months later, and they're still doing about $200,000. And when you peel back the onion a little bit, here are some details about the situation. The senior doctor has more holes in his schedule because he feels an obligation to funnel dentistry to the associate. I love that mindset. New patient numbers are about the same. So what we're really dealing with here is we started the solution of hiring and onboarding an associate, but we didn't really make any other strategic decisions in an effort to make sure that that decision to bring on the associate was actually going to be mutually beneficial for the owner, for the business, and ultimately for the associate. So again, he repeated multiple times, great core value fit, team loves her, pretty good dentist, new, trying to figure it out. So, and he asked the group, what would you do in my situation? Well, let's talk about what some of the options are. Well, this is a full-time associate and he's full-time. So one of the things that we could do is we could intentionally reduce his clinical time from, say, 4 days a week to 3.5 or 3 days a week. If that's the only lever we pulled on, what would happen? Well, it would significantly reduce his open chair time, meaning that because he's trying to do 4 days of clinical dentistry in 3 days, now we have basically 8 hours a week of previous openings that are ideally no longer existing. To which someone said, but can the office afford the drop in revenue? Great question, and this is why I love surrounding myself with super intelligent people in this mastermind. To which I said, I have never, ever, 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 ever seen an owner doc go from 4 days of clinical dentistry to 3 days of clinical dentistry, so a 25% decrease, and seen a linear decrease of 25% adjusted production. But 90% of the time, the reduction in adjusted production is about 10%. So let me just repeat that. So if you're on the fence about this, I want to make sure that I'm explaining this correctly. If a doc goes from 32 clinical hours to 24 clinical hours, or from 4 days to 3 days, they are not going to see, assuming they make some correct strategic decisions, they are not going to see a linear reduction in adjusted production of 25%. The 25% reduction in hours is not going to line up with the 25% reduction in adjusted production. It's been my experience that at the most, they see a 10% decrease in adjusted production. So why is that? It's because the owner doc got strategic about controlling their schedule, limiting the things or eliminating the things in their schedule that are low productivity, that are low profitability, things that still need to be done, but ultimately farming those procedures to the associate dentist. Now we can talk about verbiage to the patient on how to transfer the patient, verbiage to the patient on how to transfer said patient from the owner doctor to the associate doc. We can talk about verbiage about how the associate is now the specialist when it comes to X procedure. We can talk about the owner doc limiting lower productive procedures in his schedule from 2 to 3 a day to 1 a day, or something along those lines. But these are all strategies that allow for the senior doctor to reduce their clinical time and not see a linear reduction in adjusted production. So that's one strategy. So we presented that strategy to him, and he was clear that he would love to do that, but he felt that the associate was not developed enough for him to be out of the office that one additional day. Right? Super good reason. So if the associate's struggling with fillings, crowns, extractions, and is constantly calling on the senior doc for help, then it's going to be very difficult for that senior doc to simply go to a coffee shop one day a week and do his CEO work. And that was the reason that he brought up. Great reason. So now another possibility is, okay, let's keep the doctor there 4 days a week, both of them 4 days a week, and increase demand. So how do we increase demand? Well, what are our new patient numbers? Well, he's currently averaging 50 new patients a month. And it's always been my standard. Now, I'm sure people can poke holes in this, but it's always been my standard that for a bread and butter PPO practice, a full-time dentist needs roughly 40 new patients in order to be productive and to keep busy. And when we say 40, I mean new patients to the practice. I don't mean 40 comprehensive new patient exams. I mean comprehensive new patient exams, I mean consults, I mean second opinions, I mean limited exams, but 40 people that are new to the practice. It's been my belief way more often than not that if we can get a new patient flow of 40 new patients per full-time doctor, so many of these problems take care of themselves. So he's currently at 50, and he brought on this associate with no additional strategy to increase from 50 to 80. So that would be another lever that we press. Now, how do we get from 50 to 80? Well, it depends. Do we focus more on internal marketing or more on external marketing? Do we know if we're answering the phone at a high enough rate that prospective new patient leads are actually getting through to the office? How far out are we scheduling new patient leads? Do we have people at the front desk that are answering the phone that are competent in addressing scheduling questions that the patient has and addressing financial and insurance questions that the patients have? These are all things that you need to figure out. But in this particular case, the doctor said, look, I have 50 new patients per month, and he's realizing that that's not enough for 2 full-time doctors. So what percentage of that 50 are from external marketing versus internal marketing? He didn't have the data in front of them, but his best guess was 85 to 90%. That's way off in terms of ratio. So if you're telling me you're averaging 50 new patients a month and roughly 90% of them are from external marketing efforts, that's 45 out of 50 new patients. That means you're only getting 5 internal referrals. Now, why is that? It's because there's been a lack of emphasis on an internal marketing campaign. So if I were in this doctor's situation, the first thing that I would do is overhaul my internal marketing campaign. And there's lots of ways to do that. We've talked about that on the podcast. We've talked about asking for referrals. We've talked about using smile referral cards. We've talked about doing incentives to have patients refer. And a lot of our offices, especially in the summer, will set up like a big Yeti cooler with a bunch of prizes and put raffle names in there for who refers patients. One of our offices, we actually bought a huge canoe and strapped it to the ceiling in a waiting room, and talk about, patients talking about it. We've done Blackstone grills, we've done big green eggs, get people talking about it, right? And it's not salesy. Like, your patients love your practice. That's why they're still coming to you. And the number one question that current patients either ask or say is, are you taking new patients? Like, there's this mindset that, and maybe because we see it in medical, but there's this mindset of like, this practice is busy, they must not be taking new patients. So your current patient base is not even going to realize that you're welcoming new patients or that you need new patients unless you tell them, please refer your friends and family. Now, this doctor is in a very, very unique situation where he just finished this expansion. What an opportunity to now go to his patient base and say, hey, we were full. We made the arrangements because you wanted to refer your friends and family. We added these operatories. We added these doctors. Now we're ready for these internal referrals. So maybe it's like a open house. Maybe it's, again, this is not a podcast for how to do internal marketing. We can certainly do a podcast like that. But he's in the perfect position to be like, wow, we just finished this brand new office. It's something we're very, very proud of. And we now are ready from a facility capacity and from a provider capacity to welcome new patients and hopefully find another 30 new patients per month to get to 80, which is 40 new patients per full-time doctor. And the ratio that we would love to get to, worst case scenario, is of those 80 new patients, 60% of them are externally referred and 40% of them are internally referred. That's the minimum. In a perfect world, it would be a 50-50 mix where half of those 80 come from internal referrals and the other half come from external marketing. So that was another lever that we pressed. And obviously that resonated more with him because he feels he needs to stay in the office 4 days a week to make sure he's available to help this doctor with procedures. Which leads to another great question. Why are you continually needing to help this doctor with new procedures? And just a quick footnote here. It's amazing to me that when someone is a great core value fit, like he routinely said of this associate, we tend to not hold these people to the same standards of the seat that they're in. So in this particular situation, the roles and responsibilities of the associate dentist, one of which is to do good clinical dentistry. Another is to do this good clinical dentistry in an efficient way, right? So he has not been holding this doctor to this standard because she's quote unquote so nice, because quote unquote the team loves her. And I've done it myself, right? When someone's really nice and you like to be around them and the team loves them, you're so much less likely to identify the gap between what you need from them and where they currently are. So don't get sucked into that trap. It's a rabbit hole. So anyways, what we then had to talk about is, okay, well, what's the standard for an associate dentist that's 6 months out of a residency? How long should a crown prep be? What is the quality of this crown prep? How long should it take a doctor to do a 2-surface filling? What does the quality of that 2-surface filling look like? It's a somewhat subjective conversation, but we need to get as objective as possible on it. So if your current associate is taking 2.5 hours start to finish to do a single unit crown prep, and that's not working for you because it's leading to inefficiencies, it's leading to a negative patient experience because they're there way longer than they need to be, then we need to set boundaries, set parameters of this is what's going to be acceptable. And we need to timestamp it, right? So if, again, just as a fictitious example, if the doctor is currently doing a single unit crown in 2.5 hours, we want it to get to an hour and a half. And we want it to get to an hour and a half by the end of the year, in 6 months, whatever you got to timestamp it. So now we have to ask ourselves, what do we need to do to get this associate to a 90-minute crown prep by the end of the year? Well, the number one thing to do is to mentor this associate, spend time with this associate, get chairside with this associate, and do these things, right? Show them why they're taking 2.5 hours. And you can preach this stuff in the doctor's office till you're blue in the face, but until you're actually in the operatory, watching this associate prep a crown, and you come to that aha moment of, why are they running the handpiece for 10 minutes and not touching the tooth? Why are they using that burr and they think it's efficient? Like, you have all of this magic, all of this wisdom, all of this experience, yet you're not using it to collapse time for this young associate. I can guarantee you that if you spent 5 appointments watching this person take out a tooth, cut a crown prep, do a quadrant of fillings, you'd be able to create a list that's a page or two long on the things the associate needs to do differently, all in an effort to meet the standards that you guys have agreed upon that need to be accomplished by the end of the year or by the end of the quarter or within 12 months or whatever, right? I don't care what the timeline is, but you just have to make sure that you have a timeline. Otherwise, you're just going to be, festering in mediocrity for in perpetuity, which doesn't serve anyone. So I've gotten to the office where I'm going to help this doctor, which is kind of signaling me that this is a good opportunity to kind of close this out. But I just want to make sure that you guys are thinking along these lines, right? Resentment sucks. Nobody wants to harbor resentment, especially towards a good person, right? And I didn't want this doc to do it too. But just harboring resentment and not having a strategy of how we can fix this does no one any good. Certainly doesn't do the associate any good. Certainly doesn't do the business any good. And it just allows the senior doc to complain but not act, right? He may not want to increase marketing. He may not want to decrease his clinical schedule. He may not want to mentor this associate. But like we've talked about ad nauseam in the servant leadership course, character development is knowing what needs to be done and then actually doing it. So he knows now that he needs to do these things. The question ultimately now becomes, will you do it? So he's in a gap right now, right? We've talked about stimulus, gap, response. The stimulus is this resentment and why the resentment is occurring. Now he's sitting in this gap. What is he going to choose? Is he going to choose to just continue to harbor resentment? Is he going to contemplate letting this person go? Or while he's figuring out what to do, while he's sitting in this gap, is he going to be like, you know what? I don't really want to double down on marketing. I don't really want to go from 4 clinical days to 3 clinical days. I don't really want to spend 2 to 3 hours a week in the operatory with this associate, but this is what I need to do. Craig Groeschel says it really, really well, and I'll probably screw up this quote. Discipline is doing what you want most over what you want now. So what this doc wants most is a profitable associate that's going to allow him to remove himself for periods of time throughout the week and throughout the month so he can focus on other things that are important to him, his family, being a CEO, stuff like that. So if that's what he wants most, then he has to do now what he might not want to do. Again, discipline is doing what you want most versus what you want now. It's like when in the morning when you should work out, right? The alarm goes off. What you want most long term is to be in better shape. But what you want right now is to hit snooze. So are you disciplined or are you not? And that's a question that only you can answer. All right, guys. Hope this message resonated with you if you're in this situation. We're going to coach this doc through it, and he's going to come out the other end extremely healthy and good. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. You want to learn more about coaching, you want to get on the podcast and unpack a problem that you might be dealing with. I'm here to serve you. I would love to help you. My contact information is on the website, thedentallighthouse.com. There's a ton of other resources there as well. But you can text me or you can email me based on my contact information on thedentallighthouse.com. All right, guys. Love you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.